Hello and welcome to Eureka Report. I'm Tony Kay, I'm the editor, and today I'm speaking with Tim Treadgold, who's a long-time writer for Eureka Report on the resources and commodities area. So welcome, Tim.
Thank you, Tony.
Tim, I wanted to have a chat today, and you've obviously written about this at length, but there's been a sharp movement upwards in the coal price. And I just wanted to have a chat about that and really the issues driving it.
Well, as we were saying off camera earlier, it's all about supply and demand. There's strong supply and there's strong demand, and supply is weaker than it has been for a long time. So the main cause has been China. Once again, they're the culprit. They've cut their own production, and they cut it too far, and that led to a shortage of particular types of coal, and bingo, up went the price.
So is this like a return to normality?
Whatever that is, it's a return to better prices, and it's a return that's been caused by government action in China, which is always to be treated with suspicion, because what the government does, the government can undo. In this particular case, what they did was they told their coal mines to only operate for 276 days of the year, which limited supply. And then they woke up sometime around August and realised that they'd driven the price through the ceiling. I believe they're now trying to reverse that decision, and that in theory should see prices come back down again. But we have to wait and see how that plays out. In the meantime, there's been a great revival in interest in Australian coal.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? 276, that's an odd number, isn't it?
It's a Chinese number.
It's actually an even number.
The even number is I can't explain it. I mean, you'll need to go and interview the head of the Comintern or someone in China to explain it to you. But 276 was the magic number.
So China's the main driver. What about elsewhere in the world?
Well, demand for coal elsewhere in the world is still quite strong, despite what you might read in the environmental papers and protests about coal despoiling the environment. The fact is that coal still provides the lion's share of the world's electricity. It's probably not going to grow as fast as it has in the past. There are new technologies coming through, obviously long-term electricity storage in batteries, in lithium, and in being able to store wind and solar power. But coal remains a rock-solid core of the world's energy system. Ask anyone in South Australia if they'd like a new coal-fired power station. I think the answer would be yes, without a doubt.
Maybe so, Tim. I'll leave that one alone.
Thank you.
Now, when we're talking about coal, obviously there's different types of coal, and the demand especially is in the metallurgical coal?
Yes.
That's correct.
Steel-making coal, which is metallurgical or coking coal, that's the high-value material. It's hard coal, it's turned into coke, and then it goes into a blast furnace, mixes with iron ore and limestone and other bits and pieces, and out comes your pig iron. So you have to have it for most steels. It's high-quality material, and Australia produces about 60% of the world's metallurgical coal. Most fortuitous, and BHP itself is the world's biggest supplier of this high-value material. So BHP actually will be putting a lot of money in the bank at the moment, because the price for metallurgical coal has gone from $90 a tonne US, to around $200 a tonne. On a good day, it's been higher. So the price has doubled in roughly 6 months. That actually is going to have a significant effect on the Australian economy if it continues. And the knock-on consequences of the higher coal price are really quite interesting if it stays. One of them is that we might actually see our trade deficit flip into a surplus, and if that happens, you'll have the Australian dollar going up quite sharply.
Yeah, it's going to be one to watch, that's for sure. Especially with the output from the eastern states. I suppose we're going to be seeing those big carriers lined up off the shore again like we did before.
Well, I think they're there now.
Still waiting?
Well, demand for coal is strong. I mean, there's a popular belief that coal's being phased out and that coal's bad and coal's going to disappear. Well, it isn't. The world still uses a lot of it, and we sell a lot of it to the world. So the effect of far greater efficiencies in the Australian coal industry caused by the low price over the last 2 or 3 years And now with a price kicker coming in, so you've got a very efficient industry has just been handed a bonus, and that bonus is going to create an awful lot of spare cash. What happens next becomes interesting. The effect on the dollar could be substantial. The effect on corporate balance sheets could become substantial. But it all depends on that price being maintained, and that goes back to what will the Chinese government do next.
And we're also going to see this translate into listed coal stock prices.
You're seeing it now.
Without mentioning any names, but obviously there's going to be a big translation, or there is, as you're saying.
You're going to get the whole shooting match. You're seeing prices of coal companies currently listed, of which there are very few, have gone up substantially. You're seeing the early signs of corporate activity to marshal existing coal assets into a public listed structure, and that's being fed by big companies which got into trouble in the coal price crash, offloading mines they can no longer support or have decided they can no longer support. So there are a number of deals going through at the moment where assets have been sold into private vehicles, and I'm pretty confident that that sort of corporate activity will lead to more coal companies making their way onto the ASX. So that's something for investors to keep an eye on.
So obviously they believe that it's a long-term play.
There are true believers in coal, and in fact some of the people we're seeing doing the corporate dealing now and the marshalling of assets are the same people we saw 10 years ago. Some of them made a huge pile of money, some of them made it and lost it, and some kept it. But it's the same people essentially coming back for another bite.
Thanks very much, Tim. It's a pleasure to have you in the office here today.
Thank you, Tony.